Hi, my name's Sarah and I'm a volunteer with Carers Leeds. Normally, I would come along to Carers Leeds at the Hedgerow to one-to-one and group sessions to meet concerned others who are supporting loved ones through either alcohol and or drug addiction. And the reason I come along to these sessions is because I'm in recovery from alcohol dependency and have been now for just over 3 years. And I just wanted to share a little bit about what it was like for me when I was drinking, but also what it was like for my loved ones, for my mum and dad, and my brother and sister, and what it's like today. So I went into detox on the 14th of February 2017, and I was really fortunate that my parents took me to my detox, helped me with my bags, gave me hugs, told me that they loved me. Um, and I was really, really fortunate that they were there to support me at that point because for a number of years leading up to that, I'd sort of dragged them on a little bit of a roller coaster of a journey. Um, and my drinking had gradually over the years become more dangerous, darker, more secretive. Um, and I tried a number of times to stop and had managed to stay stopped for either a few days or up to a few months at a time. But I'd never had the tools to be able to stay stopped. So for my whole family, it was really hard to sort of get their hopes up every time I said, "This is it, I'm definitely stopping this time," for me to then resume drinking when life eventually, as it does, gets in the way and things start to get a little bit stressful again. And I think that was one of the hardest things for my parents is that my life gradually started to fall apart, I guess, as my drinking got worse. But the only thing I was able to do to cope was to continue to drink. So um, when my drinking really did escalate, I saw a relationship that I was in broke down because of it, um, and I drank on that for another 7 years. And I think that was really hard for my loved ones to watch because the alcohol had caused all of those problems. It was causing me all my emotional distress. It was materially affecting me in terms of my debts and my ability to pay my bills and buy food. But all I could do to manage that was to continue to drink and just keep going back to the very source of most of my problems, if not all of them at that point. And I think that was so hard for people to wrap their heads around that was all I was turning to comfort for, despite all the emotional support and love that was being offered to me from my family. Despite the propping up that they were trying to do, the alcohol was all I knew to turn to cope really. And that's kind of how things were for me for a lot of years. My drinking started off socially, although I was always the last one to want to leave a pub or a club or a party. I always drank to excess when others were either slowing down or stopping for the evening, and I'd always want to do it again the next day. And I have reflected that I often thought that people sort of functioned up here and I was down here. And when I drank, all of a sudden I met with where I thought everyone else functioned. And I felt normal in inverted commas. And I was able to talk to people. I felt better about myself. Um, and the going to pubs and clubs and parties was completely alien to me without having first had a drink. Um, but then over time, my drinking wasn't just about coping in social situations or coping with emotional distress. It was just to cope with life generally. Um, and I think for my loved ones, so as I said, one of the main things that I think they struggled with was watching me continue to turn to alcohol despite it causing all my problems. And I think the other thing for my loved ones that was a real struggle was how much support to give me. Um, and in those 7 years following that failed relationship, I drank on that emotional pain until 2017 when I got into recovery. And I think it was so difficult for my loved ones to know how much to help me and when to step back. So again, I'm very, very fortunate that my whole family offered me emotional support. They offered me practical support. My parents invited me back to live with them a couple of times when relationships went wrong. They occasionally would support me financially to make sure that my bills were paid. And then there was the emotional support and support to go to appointments, to my liver appointments that I had when I was still drinking. And it must have been so hard because the only way that the only I guess the only thanks I was giving to them through all of that support was to continue to drink. So I think in the back of their minds was, are we doing the right thing by propping Sarah up in this way? And we've reflected a little bit, or I've certainly reflected and had some chats with my loved ones afterwards in recovery, and there is no right or wrong way for anyone to move through this, and families can and do find their own way through as we did. But the one thing that I think I can reflect on is that by potentially by offering support, whether it's emotionally or financially or materially, you are potentially keeping some of the consequences of someone's drinking at arm's length. And that can then enable them to go on drinking dangerously for longer. And my parents, with complete love, and my brother and sister, did eventually start to step back a little bit because they realised that with all the support and the love in the world, they couldn't stop me from drinking. Only I could do that. And it was in those final few, I guess, months and weeks, especially leading up to my detox, where I felt acutely alone, and frightened for myself and for my health and for my future. And it was only when I had that space on my own in active addiction that I actually started to want to change for myself. Not for other people, not to please other people, but genuinely for me, because alcohol a long time ago stopped working, and all it was doing for me now was compounding my misery. I couldn't leave the house, wasn't working, the money was going to run out, and I didn't want to live like that anymore. But equally, I didn't know how to live any differently. And for me, that residential detox was the start of me doing things differently, and what's made a massive difference up to today, and will continue, hopefully for the rest of my life, is that I've connected with other people. So whilst my family support me and try to understand, it's very difficult when someone's not been in active addiction themselves to get exactly what it's like. And no two journeys through addiction are the same either, but by identifying with other people that have gone through addiction and that have come into recovery, helps me to realise that I'm not on my own, that I'm not the worst person in the world. I'm not the first person to lie about my drinking, to take money from people, and perhaps not be completely honest about where that money's going, to hide alcohol, to put vodka into a water bottle. None of those things define who I am as a person, and to reach out to other people who've been there and are now getting better, really, really changed for me how I viewed my not only my previous relationship with alcohol, but my life without alcohol. Um, and I think that was one of the things that I learned as well for me when I got into recovery this time, and was doing it differently and not trying to do it on my own and doing it with the support of other people that get me. Um, I felt different. I knew something was different this time to the other times that I'd tried to stop drinking simply just by putting the alcohol down, which for me now personally is just the first part of a lot of different steps, to be able to stay in recovery. I realised that people recover at different rates, and that my family weren't necessarily going to be along with me on this journey at exactly the same rate as I was. There was a lot of trust that needed rebuilding. People were frightened that I would start drinking again. And so we all have recovered and continue to recover, I guess, at our own paces. And that's something else that I've learned over the last 3 years or so. Um, and the idea that I want to, say sorry to my loved ones. I have always loved them. I've always loved my family. If I ever pushed them away when I was actively drinking, it was because I was trying to protect them, not because I stopped loving them. Um, and I was trying to come up with all sorts of grand gestures to say sorry and recover it. And actually, we've all come to the conclusion that by me not drinking a day at a time, I'm making a living amends today to them. And my relationships with my loved ones today are so much stronger, I think, than they were even before I got poorly. Um, so I just wanted to share this message that everyone has their own journey through addiction. Loved ones also have their own journey in terms of supporting their loved one, but there is a way through it and out of the other side. Um, and things can and do get better. There is no right or wrong way of doing that. It's about finding your own way through as a family, I guess, which is what we did. And We are, I think, stronger today because of it. I will leave it there. I hope this video has been helpful. Thank you.